Let's clap for him who is coming to attend this session of high level between policy makers and searchers. Session organized by the CCAFS. We request you to switch off your mobile phone so that we could work accordingly in this session of high level. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your commitment on climate change, agriculture and food security, CCAFS. So I recall to extend on the situation of climate change in the region. For this meeting, we'll have two sessions. The first on the impact of climate change in West Africa, and the second, the integration of climate change in the national plans, lessons learned from panels in Burkina Faso. After the conclusions of these two sessions, we'll have a press conference. To finish, a cocktail will be offered to all the participants. But before all, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like, I give the floor to Minister of Innovation to take the floor and make his address. Represent the Minister of Agriculture and Hydraulics, the General Director of CONED, representing Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, the representatives of the General Director of Livestock, representing the Minister of Livestock, ladies and gentlemen, representing the international organizations, the directors in charge of national institutions, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. Let me, first of all, to transmit the congratulations of His Excellency, the President of Burkina Faso, Blaise Compaoré, Mr. Luc Adolphe, the Prime Minister of all the government from Burkina Faso. It's for me a great pleasure to be here to chair the session of high level on the linkages between research policy linkages and climate smart agriculture in West Africa. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome everybody in Ouagadougou here for the statutory meeting of the program of research of the consolidated councils for agricultural research on climate change, agriculture, and food security. Ladies and gentlemen, the importance of this program, I think, is no more to be demonstrated, more particularly in view of the emergencies because of climate change to environment and the means of living of African population, I mean the most vulnerable one. So, there is no doubt that the climate change are impacting, have got effects on the daily life of the populations because the damages caused by the climate change, which are extreme, which happened the last few years in our countries, are enormous. From Cairo to Cape, from Dakar to Djibouti, these impacts of climate change are drought, permanent drought, low of agricultural productivity, desertification, movement of population, destructions of biodiversity, appearance of diseases and pests for livestock, if droughts, floods, and sometimes accompanied, unfortunately, with loss of material things in Africa. And more here, the challenge is that the climate change and development are linked. The poverty is severe, and we don't know what will be the next impacts linked to climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, this example demonstrates the emergent need for immediate action to be undertaken to face the new situation of climate change, but also to consider the integration of the climate change in the strategies of development of our countries. It's that the new initiative or research of CGJR, that is the CCAFS program, would like to provide its contribution through a better understanding of a complex relation and which are dynamics which are existing between climate change, agriculture, and food security. So, the climate change affects agriculture and food security, as well as agriculture and the management of human resources, which are affecting the climate change in return. All of these interactions are influenced by the economic policies, the conflicts, and so on. So it is important then to well understand these interactions, but also to well know the advantages and inconvenience of the different responses to provide to this climate change. This will constitute a big and ambitious task that no single organization of institutes could face and accomplish. So this is the reason why the CCAFS program, which through a global partnership between the CGIAR and the Committee of Scientists, Land Systems, with many researchers of the world coming from agronomic sciences, climes, and development, in aiming at understanding the interactions, the synergy, and the balance which are necessary between the climate change, agriculture, and food security. The CCAFS programs aims at identifying and developing practices, technologies, and policies of adaptation and mitigation for the agricultural system in favor of the poor population. It also aims at supporting the inclusion of agriculture in the policies linked to climate change, as well as those related to issues of agricultural policies at the different levels. So this is the reason why, ladies and gentlemen, the CCAFS program would like to engage all the stakeholders, searchers, the policymakers, NGO, OP, private sector, technical and financial partners, all of them, in order to start from existing board practices at each scale, from the local to regional level, in order to integrate their knowledge and their needs in the tools and approaches that will be developed for helping to take a decision which are well informed. So that, ladies and gentlemen, you agree with me that the availability of information, of quality of information, is a good asset in the success of the programs, projects, and policies which are developed and implemented. So the role of research is extremely important. So the research of dynamic partnership between institutional actors, scientists, financial, and civil society from the private sector and the grassroots population appears as an imperative, because we are convinced that the improvement of the capacities and human capacities should be a priority. This meeting, which brings in Ouagadougou here all the global researchers, national ones, is a good initiative that comes to enforce and to create a good basis for exchanges between concerned stakeholders of the climate change issues, and which result will feed in the more efficient way the policies and the national frameworks. And so if the climate change constitutes a reality that we could not deny, the countries, the less developed countries, which didn't contribute to greenhouse emission, are the most vulnerable. So in order to ensure the transfer of technical resources as well as financial to be able to respond to the climate change, I mean in the less developed countries, a revolution of the logic of activity is requested. It needs a global partnership which articulates ambitious policies in long term in each system of intervention, as well as a better use of the mechanism of funding which are innovative. So we are convinced that it is through such an approach that the actors could really influence the decision concerning the policies and actions from the national at the regional level, thanks to information, the better data. I would like here to encourage the collaboration between the CCAFS program and the regional institution and sub-regional one. I mean Africa, the agreement inside ECOWAS, Europa, and so on and so forth. So for me, I want to underline the efficient partnership that this program is developing with the Institute of Environment and Agro Research, CONNECT, and the involvement in its activities of many national institutions like Permanent Secretary of CPSR and the Executive Secretariat of the National Council of Food Security. I would like to get this opportunity to thank sincerely the manager of the CCAFS program, I mean its coordinator for West Africa, which did its best to make this linked partnership that from day to day brings to the key national actors to discuss about climate change. I would like, before finishing, I wish to thank INERA with its effort that did its best to do this meeting. It testified the engagement of my department to succeed this program in Burkina Faso. So I'm really convinced that the exchanges between the stakeholders in this session will contribute to define a roadmap for a permanent dialogue in order to favor a decision making which are well informed, and by this way that will could, I think, contribute to make our rural population more resilient and permit them to be able to adapt to the changing climate, to increase the food productivity, and to improve the means of existing in the sustainable environment. On this, I declare open the session between the building research policies linkages for a climate-smart agriculture in Africa. It is open. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you to Honorable Minister of Scientific Research and Innovation from Burkina Faso. I would like just to draw your attention on the ceremony of the handing out of the scientific book on for the adaptation of climate change mitigation. The ceremony is planned to be held after the finding of the high-level session. Thank you once more, Honorable Minister. So we're going to open the first part of the session. That is on the impact of climate change in West Africa. We have 5 interveners, so I would like to give the floor to the Minister because he's the chairman of the session, so that he chairs the debate. Thank you. So the first presentation, if I can read it is the impact of climate change in West Africa. The first intervention will be done by Mr. Abdullah Diallo from CORAF, if I'm getting the point well. His intervention is entitled Climate Change and Agriculture in West Africa, Challenges and Opportunities. So, Mr. Diallo, you have got the floor for your presentation.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, I wish to convey the apologies of the Executive Director of CORAF, Dr. Harold Roy Macaulay, who is unavoidably absent. He sends his apologies, but he says he has seen on the program that there are some people like the just former executive director of CORAF, Dr. Paco Sereme, who is here. There is also the Director General of INERA, Dr. Lumpu, and as well as the former chairman of the Scientific Council of CORAF. So I should be in very good hands. I am indeed very pleased to be associated with this initiative because I've been with it from the beginning. Next slide, please. The presentation will cover an overview of agriculture in West Africa. Next. I'll talk about the constraints and opportunities, the impact of climate change on agriculture in the region, CORAF WECAD's climate change initiatives, and I'll talk about some conclusions and probably some recommendations as possible. Next. This is just an overview. The West African sub-region has a population of about 250 million people. It depends largely on agriculture, with 35% of the GDP and more than 40% of its exports. Approximately 70% of these people, like most of rural Africa, live in the rural areas. In this region, like most in sub-Saharan Africa, most of the agricultural sector is characterized by smallholder farms with heavy reliance on rain-fed production systems, natural methods of soil fertility maintenance, and limited access to markets, which of course lends itself to manipulation by the natural weather. Next slide. This is just an overview of the farming system in West Africa. As you can see, you have here the coastal region, you have the forest, you have the Sahel here, and of course the desert here. And of course, naturally, the production systems vary across the gradient. You have along the coast here, you have fishing that is predominant. In the forest region, you have tree crops, and of course, a variety of crops, roots and tuber crops. And as you go up, you have the Sahel. In this entire system, in one country, you'll have all of these systems being mixed together. Next slide. What are the opportunities in this region? We have plenty of land in West Africa, about 226 million hectares. Only 10.3% is being exploited at this moment, which means there's abundant land for extension of agriculture. Irrigable land area is about 8.9 million hectares. Only about 10% is developed. There is significant pastoral and pastoral fisheries resources, in addition to, of course, the human resources, the biodiversity, and all of it. So there's a huge potential for agricultural production in the region. You want to see why are we not being able to be food self-sufficient? And the CORAF WECAD, as you know earlier on, in the strategic plan of CORAF WECAD, which is the organization that has been put to coordinate agricultural research in West and Central Africa, notes that the sub-Saharan Africa region is faced with such biophysical constraints as droughts, soil acidity, nutrient-depleted and degraded agricultural and pastoral lands, which impinge on agricultural production. The threats of climate change could prove to be most challenging to an already overstretched sub-regional production system. I mean, I don't need to go into the details. We are all aware of the threats now posed by climate change. Next slide. This is just a small overview of the trends over the years. This is showing rainfall in the 50s to the 70s. There was like favorable rainfall, but we are all aware of the drought period between 70s and the 90s. And we have this fluctuation now in the 2000s, which is, of course, showing the picture of the challenges of climate change. This is just the data of some floods in West Africa, which is indicating that the flood occurrences have increased over the years, which is, of course, a challenge. If you look at the map here, this is showing, I've talked about the Sahelian region here. I mean, from the Sahel, they're saying that the Sahelian region is going downward this way, but there may be some good news in the Nigerian area where people are seeing some greening, but overall, there's a challenge of desertification, savannization, and so on and so forth. Next slide. So what are the expected potential impacts of climate change on the region? About 10 to 15% of the species are likely to be lost in an Africa that is 2% warmer. So what we are saying is that if you have climate change, an increase in temperature of about 2%, that there is a danger for our species, which of course we rely on for agriculture. Yields from rain-fed agriculture will fall by as much as 20% by 2020. Many pests and diseases of crops, animals, and humans could change. Productivity of fisheries is likely to be reduced due to habitat displacement towards higher latitudes. I mean, this picture is saying that there's a huge challenge of climate if this situation is not put under control. Next slide. This is just a slide showing some of the impacts already that we are facing. The River Niger stream flow has fallen by about 30%. The Senegal and Gambia River stream flow have fallen by 30%. I'm sure this picture is very familiar to most of us here. In 1964, Lake Chad measured 25,000 square kilometers. Its size, however, shrunk to a mere 5% of its original size, as you can see here. I mean, in addition, of course, we know there are human factors, but climate change has also contributed significantly to this picture, which is a huge challenge. Predicted changes in yields of major crops. Like I said in my introduction, CORAF and CCAFS have been in this together 2 years ago. CCAFS initiated a study, a collaborative study involving CORAF, WECAD, and IFRI, covering 11 countries in West Africa, wherein we are studying the vulnerability of the agriculture of this region to climate change. Next slide. This is just one of the few results that that was produced. And what this is actually showing is that this is for rice and maize. If you look at the yellow-rich areas, these are the reductions in yields, which shows that if the situation continues like this, in most of West Africa, I mean, productivity will fall due to challenges of climate change. Next slide. So, adaptation to climate change will require innovation in both technology as well as policy. I mean, I'm sure that is why we are here. Over the years, several technologies have been developed, but these have not been adopted. It is not because they are not good, but it has been realized by the scientific community that it is at the policy level that policy options are required, policy backing is required to enable the uptake of these technologies so that they can help the poor farmers. So I want to congratulate CCAFS for leading this initiative, at least to have the ears of policymakers, wherein we can send the message that here are good things and what we can do. So in the bigger policy picture, we all know about CADAP. This is a comprehensive agricultural development program, which has 4 pillars for land and water, infrastructure, food security, research and technology. I'm saying this because this is where we are lodged, and the CADAP as a whole wants to achieve at least 6% agricultural growth to eliminate hunger and reduce poverty by half in 2015. Next slide. This is CORAF WECAD, which has a mandate 4 under CADAP and FARA. FARA leads Pillar 4, and CORAF WECAD covers the West and Central Africa with that mandate. CORAF was created in 1987. It's constituted of 22 national agricultural research systems in the region, because this is the population. It's mainly to promote sub-regional cooperation. That is what we are doing here. Create synergies and reduce duplications. That is what we are doing here. We are in full support of this initiative because it lies in the ambit and in the direction of what research should be doing in the region. To mobilize resources and to solve common agricultural development problems through research. Next slide. The mission of CORAF is sustainable improvements to the competitiveness, productivity, and markets of the agricultural system in West and Central Africa. This is to be achieved through the delivery of 4 major results. We are talking about technologies. We are talking about options for policy. That's why we are here. We have realized that You cannot only just develop the technologies have to go to the farmers, and if they need to go to the farmers, policy support is important. Research, strengthening of the research system, and of course, the agricultural knowledge. This is what CORAF is all about, and this is why I'm here representing CORAF. Next slide. So in this regard, because the thrust here is climate change, what is CORAF doing in the realm of climate change? Very recently, CORAF has done a review of climate of West and Central Africa to inform farming systems research and development in the sub-region. This is a review of the climate over the years, the implications, the impacts, what should be done. And in addition to that, this has informed a climate change research and development orientation framework. This framework is a strategy for guiding climate change research and development in West and Central Africa. And I must inform this gathering that this framework and what CCAFS is doing falls squarely within this framework. That is why we are very supportive of this kind of initiative. Next slide. What are the core principles of the strategy? It is linking agricultural development and food security with climate change concerns. A systems approach integrating synergies of adaptation, mitigation, and sustainable food production. Equity and participation of partners and beneficiaries in policy formulation and decision-making process. You see, it keeps on coming. Until we link research and policy, I don't think we'll be able to move forward. Consideration of gender-specific needs as well as priorities of indigenous and vulnerable communities. These are the basic principles on which the strategy is based. Next slide. And as evidence of realization of the importance of policy, CORAF, under the auspices of the Forum for African Agricultural Research, is coordinating a project called Africa Interact, which is enabling research policy linkage for adaptation to climate change in Africa. This project covers the entire African region. We have focal points in West Africa, ENDA. In North Africa, the North Africa Regional Organization under FARA. We have COMIFAC in Central Africa, Asarika in East Africa, and FANAPAN in Southern Africa. The chief executive of FANAPAN is here, Dr. Linduwe Sibanda. This project is funded by IDRC. This project is exactly in tune with what is happening here. It is trying to link research and policy so that the policymakers can be better informed as to what is going on, and so that they can base their policies on evidence. And I should point out that this project is continent-wide. Next slide. It is a virtual physical space for a dynamic and systemic multi-stakeholder process that will facilitate interactions and knowledge flows among key stakeholders, both at regional and continental levels, with regard to climate change adaptation. And one other important aspect of this project is that it is not only dealing with agriculture, because CCAFS is mainly, the trust is on agriculture. This project is dealing with health, and it's also dealing with urban issues. And it covers the entire African continent. So this activity we are having here will fully be taken on board under this project. Next slide. So the objectives of the project are to promote and support effective documentation and sharing of information to improve climate change adaptation policy in Africa, identify policy gaps, support related action research, and promote the integration of climate change research into development policies, strategies, programs, and projects at continental and sub-regional levels. We will be disseminating climate change information, identifying gaps in research and policy, strengthening capacity of stakeholders, supporting key stakeholders to attend meetings, and facilitate dialogue between researchers and policymakers. That is why I said when I started, I fully commend CCAFS for convening this meeting, which is, of course, in the right direction with this. And I must say here that CORAF is not implementing research. CORAF is facilitating and coordinating research. And CORAF is fully aware of the fact that because of the level of the national agricultural research system, the research systems in the region are not capable for now to do upstream research. So we're expecting the CG system and CCAFS to take care of that level so that the national system can do adaptive research and we can all work together and have the evidence which we can give to policymakers to make the right decisions so that the people can be supported. Next slide. So what are the regional initiatives? Facilitating the adaptation of climate change research and development orientation framework by the National Agricultural Research System. Because the framework is already there, we are now going forward to make sure that this is adapted by the National Agricultural Research Systems. We are mainstreaming climate-smart agriculture initiatives in the West Africa Agricultural Productive Program, which is piloted by ECOWAS, which is the regional economic community. And the launching of climate change strategy and vulnerability study to ECOWAS parliamentarians early in 2013. Like I informed you earlier, there is a study now on the vulnerability of agriculture to climate change in the region. This study will be launched at the COP18 in Qatar. Of course, I mean, that is for the world, but we think that that document belongs to the people of West Africa and under the auspices of ECOWAS, and in collaboration with CCAFS, we will launch this initiative early January for widespread adaptation so that it can have the ears of the ECOWAS parliamentarians. So conclusions, we think climate change is a growing reality. The West Africa region and Africa as a whole are vulnerable. The impacts of climate change could have severe consequences on agriculture-related livelihoods. There is growing awareness on climate change and its potential consequences, and that research and policy linkage is crucial in climate change adaptation and mitigation. Next slide. So what will be the recommendations? Mainstreaming of climate change in agriculture and related development projects should be a must. Development of appropriate innovations, including research for climate change adaptation and mitigation. That is where CCAFS comes in. Effective linkage between researchers and policymakers for informed policy development and implementation for the benefit of the vulnerable populations of this region. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Diallo. We'll now give the floor to Dr. Robert Zugmore, who is the coordinator in West Africa for the project CCAFS. Thanks, Chair. As you've just seen, the presentation of CORAF shows clearly that there are challenges which are existing that to face climate change in agriculture and food security in our sub-region. So I would try in my presentation to go straight on concrete examples to show the program CCAFS, that how it can contribute to improve the capacity of adaptation and of the producers and the institutions which are concerned by this dimension of climate change, food security. What's the program CCAFS? The CCAFS program is what we can call, it is a research program. I mean, a program which has got a new idea that would like to take into consideration the producer in the system and not an agronomist or an agroforester or a breeder, but to consider him as a system in the whole. And all the decision centers might come together around the common problem issues to conduct research and ensure an impact at the end. So this program, this CCAFS program, is attack the additional threat due to climate change on agriculture and food security. And the objective And our vision, it is to succeed in assuring food security through the availability of a scientific product that will permit to all the stakeholders to reinforce the capacity vis-à-vis of climate change. How are we organized? We've got 4 big themes of intervention. The first is the adaptation to progressive climate change. Here, we are trying to make some prospection to say that by 30 years or by 50 years, what will be a variety like sorghum or millet or cowpea in the given region. The second theme, it is the adaptation through management of climate risk. Here it is to all the questions related to the use of the climate information to reduce the risk, namely the season forecasting to be able to inform for decision making. The third, it is the poor climate change mitigation for the poor. So we know that this issue is not the priority, but it is important to see that in terms of adaptation, what are the potentiality in a matter of mitigation of greenhouse effects. So the program, through this theme, will try to inform on the potentials of greenhouse emissions. And finally, fourth one, it is the integration for decision making, all the product of the 3 first themes for decision making. Yes. Then, for the moment, the program is intervening in 3 big regions in the world: West Africa, East Africa, and Indo-Gangetic area. How CCAFS can contribute to capacity building in terms of adaptation. Let's take some examples. And first of all, the program tried to make a diagnostic of the challenges, of gaps, and also of the priorities in a matter of adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And this was done at many levels. At the community level, so I mean at the subnational level, we conducted baseline studies in households, in villages, or in the organizations level to have some reference data on the current situation of all these stakeholders. We also did monitoring and evaluation planning for participatory in the implementations activity, and this was done with all the stakeholders in order to be sure that all what we'll get in this activity will be immediately disseminated and adapted by all the producers. We also compiled a certain number of information which are already existing that all the actors could already be using, and this gives you all the information on the baseline studies we conducted at the community levels concerning the reference studies I talked about before. At the national level, what we did, we started analyzing the current status and of national policies in the matter of climate change adaptation. And this was done in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Niger, in Senegal, as well as in Ghana. And there are existing reports today to be able to inform on the current level of implementation of the PANA of NAMA in these different countries. This exercise permits also to identify the priority needs in matter of research in these different countries. We also set up in each country some teams of experts that will conduct the research on the quantification of greenhouse gases. We know that in these countries, usually the issue of availability of information, the updated information on these greenhouse gases are causing problems. So the CCAFS would like to reinforce the capacity of the countries to so that they could lead this work by themselves. We also started vulnerability studies of agriculture of 11 countries vis-a-vis of climate change. This which was mentioned by Dr. Abdullah before. So at the regional level, what have we done? Works have already been done by this work to define what we call the heat climate areas, but also to define what are the reasons which are more facing the food security and also by vulnerability for climate change. This is a useful information for the decision makers, for them to know that, for them in Burkina Faso, what are the zones which are the most vulnerable because of climate change, and this permits to take a decision in terms of investment. Always at the regional level, we started what we call the process of development of scenarios, a scenario of development that permits us to say that by 30 or 50 years, what would be the situation of the agricultural sector of our sub-region. So are we going to continue producing intensively and not to be aware of issue of environment? This is a possible scenario. Are we going to continue to produce while focusing on private sector that we know that the management is sometimes not easy? This it is also a possible scenario. Or are we going to say that it will be the government that must be in charge of food security? So it is the government that will take the lead, and so we let aside the private sector. This is also a scenario that is possible. So these scenarios have been defined by all the regional actors, and we are now trying to give the cost of all these scenarios that could be informed at the regional level. We could inform WAMU or ECOWAS on the vision that they could choose according to different scenarios. So the other aspect, we are making also the capacity building of our partners for research. We give them tools of research, like what we call the climate analog tool. It permits to say that the current climate of Ouagadougou, for example, is for example a climate of, for example, a city in Ghana that will be in 30 years. If so, it means that if Ouagadougou doesn't want to be like in 30 years, they must go and look for the experience that the people are implemented in the prospective way to avoid to reach this state. And on this basis, we are making some exchanges between producers of these analog zones so that they can learn lessons and duplicate them directly in their area. We are also doing communication of seasonal forecasting with all the stakeholders, with the producers, to make them be able to decide of a way of managing their exploitation according to this climate information. If the farmer knows that the season will be a good rainy season, he could decide to plant rice rather than sorghum. If the rainy season will not be good, you could use small sorghum than big grain sorghums. We are also making some documentation of innovative practices, and the document will start is the first draft to inform people on the practice of the farmers in the matter of adaptation and mitigation of climate change. We have also got a repertory of data collection in order to permit to all the users to use the existing data to make the forecast. They use the models, and this will permit to avoid, to duplicate, and to invest for the data collection. It has been initiated by CCAFS. And here also we have another site where we are putting all the existing practices in the world to share with everybody so that the exchanges of information could be profitable to all the stakeholders. The third component that I want to talk about, so that we want that the COFAC program in West Africa be the program of reference, a program where everybody referred in matter of issues linked to climate change. And for that, a certain number of initiatives are taken to permit it. It means, for example, the participation of CCAFS program to all the major regional events. Is also the development regional platform of exchange between researchers and policymakers at the regional level. It's also to engage with key institutions like ROPA, with which we want to really develop what we call a smart agriculture, an agriculture that is taking good of climate. This is how we could give all the information, give all the scientific knowledge to the benefits of all the stakeholders. We are also supporting a certain number of institutions in the sub-region, including some national institutions, and the list is long. And the program had just started in 2011, so we hope to continue till 10 years. Finally, we've got a communication center which is very important, and for that we are creating a website in French and to host all the information in French for the Francophone that we are in this sub-region. Next slide. And in conclusion, the CCAFS program is a program of partnership. Who says partnership says research of partners are committed and who want in a win-win way work together in synergy. And this is why you've got the list of the current partners. It's very long and it's not finished. So it's how we hope that this program will contribute to reduce poverty, to improve food security, to improve nutrition and health, and of course, the sustainable management of natural resources. Thank you.
I give the floor to Mr. Kalulu Sila from ROPA, Perspective Producers as regard research and action for small family exploitations, farming. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank you for the opportunity that is given to us to share the experience of ROPA and the policy in West Africa on this issue. I would not be too long. I just want I only have 5 minutes to ask 5 questions and then to answer all the questions in 1 minute. So the first question is that why shall we be careful about this problem? Why? We need to be careful because our region is vulnerable. It's the most vulnerable area. We have a region that is having food insecurity, and also where a great number of our countries are facing, let's say, disadvantaging factors. This is a region that is that's having lots of problems, but also the climate change will result in a reduction. To result in a reduction of yields of 10 to 20%, depending on the crops, because the climate change will make that we have the issues of health, especially for children, because the climate change will cause these issues of research to be more complex, and especially with the new diseases and also economic issues. So these are new problems. That's why we need to be careful about these issues. And the other question is that, do we have a framework for that purpose? Do we have a framework for that purpose? We can say yes, we can say no. Yes, because we know in Africa we have the chance that we have what we call the regional program of investment, of agricultural investment. So these programs are a consensus. It's a regional alliance at the regional and national level. And I really appreciate the ECOWAS and way more, the ECOWAS and all the partners for enabling, made it possible for us in the region, and also the participation of the farmers to meet, to have this coherence of this policy. I think it's an opportunity that we have now. So, but this opportunity does not enable us to, it is not really favorable for us. We have cases where we can have, we can fight against climate change, but that's not the case at the national level. When you look at the national policies in African countries, there's nothing that is made towards climate change. And, you know, we have a framework with the ECOWAS, but we have nothing at the national level because ECOWAS and CILS have no, let's say, space, no territory. So we need to be worried. You should be concerned, and also we need to ask the question, what to do? What shall we do? What shall we do? I think the first of the things is to fight against, let's say, lack of action, and also to act, because IGRISAT is given the opportunity to fight against this lack of action. So there are three actions to undertake. The first, the ex-ante actions. The first, the regional level has a framework that can be improved so as to face climate change. But we need, in these actions, to develop our capacities of prospection, to prevent. We have few instruments of prevention in the region. So this is a danger, because the danger is to wait for the problems to occur and start trying to find solutions. So we need to develop. It's true for food insecurity. We have frameworks that are not, let's say, specific for climate change. So we need to change them into climate framework and improve them to face climate change. You know, at the level of the actions, I would, let's say, focus on exports actions. I'm happy that IGRISAT developed a very good framework for this program so as to face adaptation. This is where we have the lots of difficulties, and that's why we are requesting our states to act, because most of the time we don't look at what the farmers are doing, but how to monitor them, how to adapt. There are few actions at the national level, so this is where we think we need to act. And so I really appreciate let's say the works done for the adaptation, be it at the level of IGRISAT and also CORAF. These are very important to works, so as to work so that we adapt ourselves. So it's very important. I will finish by launching an appeal, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to give the opportunity to action. With all what I've said, there are lots of opportunities, but we need to give opportunity to action. That's why ROPA is not doing only saying that the government are not doing what they are doing. So we need to encourage it, but we can also be proposals. That's why ROPA in December with IGRISAT and CORAF, ROPA will organize a workshop so as to help the states, the governors, to provide a framework of exchange and also a framework to monitor, to support, to supervise the states, the governors, so that the national investment program can be climate change program. So we need to invite Mr. Minister to encourage them for more actions. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you, Mr. Sila. We give the floor to Mr. Sylvester Da for the WASCAL program. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I thank the organizing committee for giving us the opportunity to present the WASCAL program, that is the Center West African Service, a scientific service for climate change, and also the adapted use of lands. The WASCAL program is funded by the government, the German government, through the Federal Ministry on Education and Research. The program was, the planning stage was launched in 2010, and the implementation started officially this year in October. What are the objectives of the project? WASCAL is designed to answer, to meet the challenges of the climate change and to increase the resilience of the systems, human and environmental systems, through the enhancing of infrastructures and capacity building for research in climate change in West Africa, and also while putting together the expertise of 10 countries, especially West African countries, except for Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia. So WASCAL includes of three components. The first component is the Center of Competence. That is a new structure that will be based here in Ouagadougou, and the role is to conduct research that will enable us make it possible to provide proposal for the decision makers, and also support on impact on climate change, and also attenuation measures and adaptation. So another element. Another important point of this Center of Competence, the creation and improvement of tools and observation network, so as the collection and the dissemination, the treatment, processing on data. So this will be the help to improve the scientific research activities, especially analysis of the impact of climate change and also strategies of adaptation. The various these networks of observation are already planned. I don't want to give them. I'll just give a few examples. The meteorological observation center, and also a network for observation, hydrological observation, and also for biodiversity, and also a network for socio-economic network observation. The second main component of WASCAL is a main program of research that concerns the adapted use of tools, and also the condition of use in the field, the purpose of climate change. So we have two consortiums, and the one is from Germany, that is conducted by German researchers and coordinated at the University of Bonn in Germany, and that one is coordinated by institutions and universities of African countries, the partners. The main program of research puts a stress. I will just give a few points. The improvement of capacity of adaptation of ecosystems and ecological systems and socio-economic systems, and also provide services, key services like agricultural production, sustainable agricultural production, and also sustainable management of water, and also soil productivity, and also protection of carbon. So the target area for the research program is at the level of the Sardinian area, that is considered as a potential region, potential agricultural region. If six topics are covered by the research program, especially the climate and time, the dynamism of landscape, the system of agriculture, the markets, the livelihood means, and also integrated evaluation of what I've just mentioned. Each topic of research is made up of some themes. We have many of them. I don't want to mention all of them. And for the next component is question of program of training that we call research PhD program research. It supports and facilitates the university training in West Africa in partnership with institutions, German institutions. And the activities of this program is training that will be done in various fields, especially let's say a PhD school on climate issues, and also a PhD school on water resources that will be based in Benin, and another one in economy, climate change and economy, that is based in Senegal, and another school on climate change and lands that will be based in Ghana, and the PhD school on agriculture based in Mali, and a PhD school on biodiversity that will be based in Cote d'Ivoire. For the time being, we have four PhD schools that are operational. The other ones are on the process to be set up. We hope that this year, maybe next year, it will be starting. So just to briefly say how these schools are organized. These PhD schools have partner universities. Each of these schools is based in a country, a partner of WASCAL. I just talked about it, and how the recruitment of the enrollment of students is done. We enroll a student per country. This is in total 10 students per year. We have seven schools So we have 70 schools, the students, and the training is for 3 years. And at the end of the 3 years, we have 70 students that will train on these issues of climate change. This is briefly what I could say on the WestCal program. So if there are any questions, I'm at your disposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now we give the floor to Mr. Thierry Lebel. Thank you. You know, Association of Climate, they are accused of manipulating the climate. We are not responsible for the floods that took place in 2009. I think another important contribution of Burkina Faso was the hosting of center operation of some experience in 2006. I want to thank particularly the committee Ama Burkina that was chaired by Le Posome, who is with us today, because the contribution of Burkina Faso was extremely important all along the first phase of the program that lasted about 10 years. So AMAS means a multidisciplinary analysis of African monsoon. The climate of the region is steered by a system of monsoon. It's the research plan, multidisciplinary research plan, because it included hydrologists, economists, and specialists of health, and people who work in sociology, socioeconomists. One of the things that seems important for me, especially, I'm happy to talk of this about the Ministry of Research. It is an initiative that started from the universities, especially in the European Africans and some African countries, that very quickly included all the countries. We have AMA communities in Africa, West Africa, and also in Cameroon. And when the scientists initially developed a international scientific plan that was disseminated broadly, it was presented in Niamey in 2002. On this basis, a certain number of African scientists that say own this, they organize their own meetings, and they developed their own scientific plans on the basis basing on the international framework, and they extended this project that was around scholar issues on the reasons for big droughts in the 70s and 80s and its productivity. They extended this question to a question that integrated the concerns both of the African scientists and the population, African population. So, and this, I think, the title of my presentation, it's called networking. Networking in French. French it doesn't have the same meaning, so it can be some bit negative. So I think here networking here means he intends to stress on the fact that AMA project was able to network about 250 scientists. So we had 40 persons in the last conference here in Burkina Faso, and half of them was African. And the fourth international conference was held in July in Toulouse. We have about 350 persons, and half of these researchers were Africans. So I think this is an important gain, and AMA in Indian can be, it means the major project that encompasses all the project. It will fertilize a community that is available today to work in some other projects like CCAFS, EWOSCAD. And I would like to conclude in saying that Burkina is known for its big capacity to coordinate program of coordination that are conducted in the country. And I think these qualities will be very useful to avoid that the different programs that work in the frame of climate change so that they do not overlap and so that they do not work in competition. I think coordination is fully necessary for their success. Thank you. So now we move to the second part the second part that focus on the integration of climate change in the national plans, agriculture and environmental plans, lesson learned from the partners in Nama in Burkina Faso. So the first intervener will be it is the representative of the Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources, Dr. Martin Bikenga. You have got the floor. Thank you, Honorable Minister. So first of all, we need to say that we are happy for this meeting, mainly because agriculture is a sector that is very sensitive to climate change. So we are happy that today we have the possibility to bring together researchers and decision makers to discuss of this issue that for us is a crucial issue. So we also want to reassert the need for us today to integrate climate change in also policies and strategies of development. This is basic. If this is not done, so we are not going in the way of development. So as level of the Ministry of Agriculture, we are a ministry that is in charge of the seeking food security, sustainable food security, and for that we need to face four challenges. Which of them consist of increasing the food availability. This is a basic challenge. Why? Because population is growing and it is more and more urban population, so that not only the need for food increase but are diversified. The second challenge it is to facilitate the easy access to food, physical access, but also the economic accessibility. And the third challenge consists in ensuring a good, better use of food. That's it, taking consider seriously nutritional food. Most of the time we talk about food, but we neglect the nutritional aspect. Nutrition is not in a good place in the policies in our countries, especially more especially in Burkina Faso. It's true that there are efforts that are done, but we think that considering the importance of the issue, there's some effort need to be done. The fourth challenge to be taken up is how to prevent and manage the food crisis in our country. Today we should no longer be surprised by a food crisis. So this means there are some effort that need to be done in the early warning regarding all that is related to food security. What can research do in this way? What can research do? We think that basically there are two main things that research can do. First of all, it is to help us at the level of agriculture to reduce the vulnerability of the production system. This is reducing the vulnerability of the production system. Secondly, increasing the resilience of agriculture facing climate change. We think if we have support of scientific research on the side, that will allow us to make some progress and to go more securely towards the achievement of food security that is sustainable. I will conclude in quoting some research themes that could keep your attention. It's true that if we consider the presentation that have been done, there is some progress in reading the publications, the findings of the research. We admit that there are some progress that have been achieved, but considering the importance of the issue of climate change, we wish that we be able to focus on 6 themes that I'm going to list here. The first of them, better knowledge, improved knowledge of the impact of climate change on agriculture and water resources, because to address this, we need to deepen the knowledge on the impact on agriculture and the impact of climate change on agriculture and water resources. The second research theme could be the issue of the carbon sequestration. Here we have a few knowledge in the area, whereas there are some important efforts that need to be done on this aspect. The third theme, here, there are many things that have already been done, but we need to go further. That's the research of varieties that are adapted to climate change. The fourth research theme that I would like to mention here is the management of soil fertility in the context of climate change. We can no longer manage fertility as it was done in the past. We need to take into account, further take into account of climate change. So the fifth theme is the development of tools for that's supportive tools for decision making. I want to talk about seasonal forecast. That's a provision. Like every year, during the meeting for the seasonal forecast, so information on what will be the agricultural year from July to July, August, and September. But the problem that appear here is that the beginning and the end of the agricultural seasons are very important. So we think we need to deepen this aspect. The beginning, because the campaign, the food agriculture campaign, sometimes start randomly. Today, the agricultural campaign continue until October. And sometimes we are saved because of the rainfalls in October. It's true that some progress that have been achieved for June, July, September, but we think we need to deepen the research on the beginning and the end of agricultural campaigns as a crop year. So I would conclude saying that we need to have a review of all the technology that will allow us to better adapt, cope with climate change. It's true some of them are already existing. They need to be maybe to improve. Some other technologies need to be developed. Here are broadly the few suggestions I had to do to say that we are expecting much from research, and we are convinced that with this support of research we could go ahead, we could go further in the achievement of food security, sustainable, especially sustainable food security in our country. Thank you, Dr. Bikenga. So we are a bit lagging behind. We are going to try to speed up a bit the presentation. The next presentation, it is by the representative of the Ministry of Livestock. So you have got the floor. Thank you, Chair. I am Desiree Sommet, the General Director of the Department of Livestock Production. I apologize, Ministry of Livestock, who wished to be here, but he is away in the province where there is a program by the government that is being launched that fits into with the theme we are dealing with, how to manage to provide meat to affordable price to the population. We have just launched a program in the frame of the special program for job creation in Bulsa in the province. The minister is there. So we received our element to say what are we are the needs information to integrate climate change in the national policy. Responding to the question asked to us, partly we thought that we need to build the institutional and individual capacities of decision maker, because to integrate a subject in a policy, you need the person in charge of developing the policy needs to know what is this issue. He has a good information on the issue to be able to integrate it into a document that will make available. As the Honorable Minister said, because we are a bit late, there is a set of themes, a series of themes that we listed. We think that in disseminating this theme to the structure of the ministry and to the responsible that in charge of developing the policies, something could be done. If not, we can already note down that the ministry developed a document or policy that is called the National Policy for Sustainable Development of Livestock by 2025, and the issue linked to climate change occupy an important place. And the responsible in charge of the issue of climate change at the level of the country are being associated. We are assisted in the development. They assisted us in the development of the document. So if not in terms, let's say after capacity building, when we talk about livestock, we see the food and the displacement of the cattle, the livestock. Burkina are just faced a food crisis during the season, and all that who are here. When we talk of crisis, we think of human being. Very few people think about animals. So that when we talk about the issue, some who are not well informed think that it was concerning only human beings. And the good example for you to see is the Malians came, they developed a plan to address a massive coming of Malian refugees, and nothing was planned in the plan for the animal. And now the Malian refugee came with important cattle of animals. So as in a subject, how to feed animals in the context of climate change, and animals and for whose law is authorizing the displacement. There's a law for pastoralism in Burkina Faso for the movement of cattle and animals is authorized by a law. The second subject regarding the movement of cattle is a transboundary transhumance that is raising a lot of problems because of climate change. And these problems are raised because there is a series of information that are not available on transhumant animal rearing. There is not a prospective analysis of transhumant that is available that allow to make a set of decisions. So the document that we propose that will be made available, they mention the elements we need for a transboundary transhumant that is peaceful, because currently the problem is real. In spite of all the laws at the level of ECOWAS and UEMOA, Burkina is a country that is not treated as it needed. It's cattle, livestock animals. We do not have enough resources, and the neighboring countries are making some problems regarding the displacement of the cattle. So here is very shortly, since we have time constraints. If not, we have a document that we are going to circulate for the organizer. Thank you for your attention.
Merci. Thank you, Mr. Sommet. We give the floor to the representative of the World Bank, or the Environment, Minister of Environment. And thank you, Chair. I would like also to apologize to the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, which is out of the country, who gave me in charge of Permanent Secretary of the National Council for Sustainable Development, Environment, to address this panel on a certain number of concerns and also some suggestions. So I'm assured through what I've heard that the Permanent Secretary of CONED, which assured the coordination of intervention in matter of climate change, and which plays the role of interface between the national activities and the international activities, through what I've heard, give me some hope, because the issue of climate change constitute a real priority national, at the international and regional level. So we've got in charge the coordination of activities to permit the development of a notable national communication on climate change that you all know. And at this level, there are a certain number of things that we note. We face to produce a document of good quality. With this panel organized by CCAFS and the program that you are implementing, I think that this partnership will permit to improve the quality of the different documents that we are producing at the national level. There are a certain number of challenges that we have. I will talk about environmental issues in general and more precisely what links us directly to climate change, to say that the forestry and agroforestry, which plays the role of sequestration of carbon, is also facing difficult situation with the issues of climate change, and which also limits the capacity of carbon sequestration of this forest. So there is a need to first of all know what are the inventory of picture at the national level. We make an inventory, a forestry inventory, which is very expensive. Since the years 80, it's now that we are launching the second forest inventory at the national level. And it's through this program, which is developed with the contribution of Luxembourg and Sweden, that Burkina Faso will succeed in establishing the inventory of its patrimony and assess the potentialities, the capacity of carbon sequestration. So in terms of challenges, I will say that from the experiences that we have in Burkina Faso, from the first note of climate change and the second note that will be submitted very soon, that there is a need that the research will help to make a good assessment of the vulnerability studies of the different sectors at the national level. As you know, there are a certain number of models which are existing. The national expert worked a lot with the models from the north, which do not have a good relationship with national reality, and which make that the vulnerability for the note of communication were underestimated or overestimated. Secondly, it is the consideration of the option of adaptation in order to increase the different pilot program we have. Thanks to the Fund for Global Environment and Japanese government and Swedish and Denmark, we have been able to develop, and we are implementing on the field some programs of adaptation to climate change drawn from our national plans of adaptation. These are a pilot program that we wish to increase, to do in the national level because of the vulnerability of all the country. So we think that the taking charge of these different type of program could permit to soften at maximum the different vulnerable population. We also think that with the previous experience that we have, that there is a need for research to support the creation of a mechanism, of operational mechanism for the management of the early alerts. And the floods of 1st September 2009 learned us that better coordination is very needed. I want to go in details. Those who lived it understood the need that we have a better coordination, the need of a better coordination. An important aspect not to be let aside, it is the transformation of mentalities and the behavior of ourselves, the intellectuals, the clerks, the researchers, but also the producers in the field. Our colleague from fishery was talking about, let's say, capacity building. If I talk about this issue, it means that there is a gap at this level, at our level. So we must be courageous and face this problem, which, from my point of view, really may compromise the different financial effort, intellectual effort that we are investing in the area of climate change. Also, the different choices of mitigation in the agricultural level. Mr. Zugmori talked about it. It is the issue of mitigation. I personally refused that agriculture, which is one of the pillars, and that could lead to food security, that we could conduct studies of the mitigation on this level. perhaps by ignorance, but because I know that our security food is threatened, and that for the lack or insufficiency of scientific information that we cannot bring use mitigation attitude in agriculture. I'm very happy that this issue is part of the program, and together we'll see in which way scientific information could permit to convince the decision maker so that we could tackle this issue. It's part of the agenda at the international level. By a few weeks, we'll go in Doha for the women 18. For the less developed countries and also for the African countries, we are for the moment reluctant, even though some decision makers are favorable to develop the issue of mitigation so that it could generate resources for the producers at the grassroots level. But really, there is a missing of research at level. So I wish that the scientific community own it. For the establishment of the greenhouse gases, excuse me, I'm taking more time because there are issues I am coordinating at the national level, and it is the opportunity for me to call upon the researchers here. So for the greenhouse gases, we are working with factors by default, and also with some coefficient for the source of emission which are not in conformity to the national norm. And this, I will think that we need research in this area. And I know the budget government gave to the research is not enough. But I think that with goodwill, with partners, namely with program, you could accompany the national expert to establish a good inventory. And we think it is a capital for the different states. In terms of proposition of solutions and paths of research, first, at the national level, the setting up of a platform of dialogue, as you've started doing, between the decision maker, the researchers, the technicians, the collectivities, the NGOs, but also the private sector. So I think that this dialogue is needed because each person has got his place to work to do. And so I'm very happy to see that the researchers are getting open, because if you remain in your labs, you do not give anything to development. So I do not hesitate to say it. But if this is shared, the fruit, the outcome of research are put to the producers, I think that we can have growth. It can bring growth. So for ourselves, the decision maker, the minister is here since he's participating in the Council of Ministers. Okay. I think there is the political will. But I'm concerned if there is a political courage to be able to determine one or two or three key sectors and give investment at about for 7 to 10 days, so that we can appreciate the different impacts and the different contract of objective that could permit to really see that by the 15 following years that something have changed in Burkina Faso, something have changed in the sub-region, because the budget given to these issues, even though there is a political will, we do not feel a financial accompaniment from the budget of the states. The permanent secretary of CONED aims cross-cutting issues, which makes him work with other sectors at the national level. Because to conduct a communication note, we need to work with the sector of energy, agriculture, waste, forestry, and so on and so forth, because we must compile a certain number of information to be able to establish some inventory, to make some models, to make some proposition of option of mitigation. And on this line, we think that we will contribute. We have started since then working with UNEDA. We'll continue to work with the CCAFS program is there, and that can support national teams to improve the different challenges that are linking us at the international level as well as at the national level. So we've just come from Rio with some certain number of concern, which which should to promote a green economy. So I think that at level of research with the economists, there are some possibilities in the area that can boost our development, our economy, to have some good GDPs in terms of contribution to the development of our country. We have also adopted 3 days ago the national policy of sustainable development, which goes beyond the sectoral policy, which have been, we've got also, we've validated some criteria of sustainable development. So it means that in the future years, we'll see the revision of a certain number of laws, policies to integrate the dimension of sustainable development, which consider the climate change. And we'll do our best to assess the different progress, and also in the area of research to see what will progress, what doesn't work, and take the appropriate measure. Here is a bit, Mr. Minister, the contribution of the Minister of Environment and Sustainable Development, but mainly it is a transversal section which calls upon the participation of all the national stakeholders in order to make to consider the climate change in the different policies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I'm Elise Ouedraogo. I'm responsible, I'm a project officer at the level of the World Bank in Ouagadougou here. The World Bank currently ensures the role of lead of the financial and technical partner in the area of rural development and food security. So it is with this double cap that I'm going to try, this double responsibility that I'm going to try to say something regarding the funding of the program of adaptation and mitigation of the effect of climate change in the West African countries. The role of technical and financial partner as this has been requested at the level of the program. So in the first step, it's clear that climate change is an aspect or a sector that is emerging, a new sector at the level of the development, especially in Africa, because of the high vulnerability of this continent, when you know that 2/3 are occupied by desert or semi-arid or arid species, and also because all that concern activities of livelihoods, of subsistence, the economic activity of the population are based or are much influenced by climate variability and climate change. So it's really a new domain at the level of the development, and we truly need to consider this as such. Now, in terms of mobilization of funding, that's financial resources, I think as that has already been said during the working session and what we heard from the presentation, the integration of the problem of climate change in the policy of development, both at the national level or at the level of sectoral policies. So this is a starting point for the mobilization of funding. We think that it is even a strategy of mobilization, of the raising of funds for the sector in terms of adaptation to climate change. You'll have maybe the difficulty to convince a financial partner to give you money for an adaptation program, because the adaptation is always linked to something. But if you succeed in integrating this dimension of adaptation in the different policies, it becomes easy to raise funds at the same time for the operation activities, but at the same time for the activities that are concerned directly to adaptation. That's why we think the integration of the dimension of climate change in the policies, in the national policy or the sectoral policies, it is not only the technical exercise, it is also a strategy of mobilization of resources. This is an aspect that I think that is extremely important because, as you know, we have the Declaration of Paris and all the dynamics of the alignment not only in terms of procedure but also in terms of priorities that have been identified by the countries, the funders or the financial or technical partners to fund the program, be it at the multilateral or bilateral level. We always refer to the policy of the country to be able to develop one own strategy that take into account the concerns and where the partner has a competitive advantage compared to the other partners. That's why it's extremely important that the dimension of climate change be already in the first step captured at the level of the policy that allow to facilitate the mobilization of funding. The role of technical and financial partner, of course, it is to assist to accompany this process. That's on the technical aspect, but we think it is also to develop tools, financing tools that take into account the problem of climate change. Of course, there are some existing tools at the level of the bank. You have the IDA resources, you have the fund, FEM, the resources of FEM. You have new tools like the Fund for Adaptation of the Convention. There is a certain number of tools, but we need we truly need for this instrument to be, this tool to be operationalized, and so that the countries take ownership of them and be able to truly mobilize consequently the necessary resources for the take into account of climate change in the implementation of the different activities that will be at the level of program or policies. At the level of research, we think the role of technical and financial partners will be to be able to assist, to accompany the mobilization of resources for the upgrading of the adaptation technologies. As some speakers, participants said a few minutes ago, today there are a certain number of technologies that have already been generated by research, but the upgrading of this technology is a challenge. From the farm, if you go at the level of the landscape, the good practices, the best practices that are in a country that we want to disseminate in some other countries or within the same country in some other, the issue of the upgrading of the genetic technology, we think it's an important aspect that deserves to be addressed. And to conclude, since we have time constraints, we have the role in the mobilization of resources for the capacity building. Capacity building of the stakeholders, capacity building both technical capacities, but also in terms of human resources, to be able to successfully conduct a different program and project that will be developed. Here is, Honorable Minister, what we wanted to share with the person. We want to thank one more the organizer for this opportunity and ensure you that we are fully available to provide the necessary support for the continuation of the activities. I thank you. Thank you, the representative of the World Bank. So we have a few time left. We have normally some discussion in plenary. If you do not see any, you do not have any objection, we are going to take maybe 2 questions at the level of the plenary. And so the comments that that's an important issue, so some question or some comments, so that we'll be able to comply with the time, because I think they have got some participants that are leaving this evening. So we are going to have maybe 2 questions, if any. So you have got the floor. Mr. Sereme, you have got the floor. ECOWAS. So, Mr. Sereme, you have got the floor. Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think I'm going to join my voice and commend, congratulate for this opportunity provided this afternoon to see that through a continental initiative, I would say global initiative, CCAFS, a global initiative to bring together today other type of stakeholders, except those who have already discussed on this program, that is researchers. Today we have lucky to have the policymakers, we have police organizations, and we realize that there are many initiatives that focus on the issue of climate change. Someone said it in the room, but I think it was said very fast. I want us to come back on this, to draw the attention of the policymakers on the need to ensure a better coordination of what is being done. I have the impression that it is from the opportunities of financing that are large, so people try to cling, and there is a lack of this linkage at the level of those who we want to work for, be at the national or continental level. There is a lack of direct dialogue with these recipients, these beneficiaries. And the structure that is better organized and that is fit for that, it is the policymakers. So I want to draw the attention of the authorities so that they make sure for a better coordination of all that is going on the field. If not, we are going to have, let's say, a large number of action, and by the end we won't have a significant impact. Once the funding is over, and people will leave. So it's a heartfelt cry I'm launching here. Thank you. The representative of the ECOWAS, thank you, Honorable Minister. I think this is a very good meeting. I would like to make a certain number of comments. I come from the ECOWAS. It's a regional institution. The states, the government. From ECOWAS, it's a regional institution. The institution can exist that only if the government assists the institution, because the institution is their property. The previous speaker said a few things. I won't come back on this. I think what matters, what is important in all these type of programs, all these issues that are going on, we indeed need for the government to take ownership of that and be the bearer of this at the level of the regional institution. First of all, the regional institutions have many activities that are being conducted. We have programs of investment, as mentioned, Rova. We have regional programs, but before completing this program that come from the continent, some are stepping aside of that. I think if you want to succeed with all these issues linked to droughts, we say this is new issues. These are not new issues. These are issues that are existing for a long time. The drying up of the Sahel it didn't start now. We started feeling this in the 60s with all the problems that we face. So I think that the government needs to take responsibility. That's it. We need to support the population. The population know their problem. They are already adapted. They know the problems. So the government needs to assist them, to help them. But how to help them? To help them to access to progress. The first presenter provided information on the available surfaces. He says the population will be this. That's the figures. We also need to know the cattle, how many cattle, the availability of water, what will be the water available. The second presenter said in 30 years, such a city of Burkina Faso will be comparable to the situation of another city in Ghana. That's nice. But how the population here will know this dynamic that will happen in 30 years? The public authority need to help them. The public authority need to help them. How? In helping them to access to progress. It is in the area of livestock. Beginner mentioned things that are clear. I agree with him in the area of livestock. But I would rather focus here. Also, there are things that are serious at this level. The problems today that the cattle breeders are facing are dating back to the early 60s. The pastoral population get impoverished. They are abandoned by the government. So many young Fulani became that's Mr. Sanu, I don't want to interview, but I think that issue, these are important issues. But unfortunately, we have time constraint. So if you could try to come to a conclusion. So I think these are important issues that we need to take into account, Honorable Chair. Thank you. So it's planned after this plenary that the chairman of ESP make some remarks, so I'm giving him the floor. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Let me start by pointing out that this meeting of CCAFS Scientific Committee here in Burkina Faso has been rather unique. It's been unique because it's the first time that we meet in West Africa. But even more importantly, it's unique because it's engaged both a field trip to discuss with villagers and local farmers and this session on science policy dialogue. And I would like to start by thanking our regional program leader, Dr. Robert Zugmore, as well as the director of INERA, Dr. Francois Lompo, for arranging this. It's clear that food security has become very high on the political agenda for several reasons. It is, of course, the growing population. It is, of course, the fluctuation commodity prices, but of course also the attention on climate change issues. As was explained by Dr. Zogmeri, CCAFS wants to address the trade-offs and synergies between improved food security, rural livelihoods, and environmental health. And several of you have said that we need to take a holistic approach. We need to address all the three pillars of sustainable development: social, economic, and environmental. And that's why it's very positive that there are representatives of several ministries here. And I hope through the World Bank that we can also engage through your various activities, the ministries of finance and development. As Dr. Zugmore also said, we expect and hope that CCAFS will be the go-to place for scientific information. But I think it's also important, that's why we have this session, it should be also the place where you go to express your views on the need for scientific information. Representatives of the ministries did that in their interventions. This is not a one-way exchange of information and facts. It's a two-way dialogue, and that's why this type of meetings are so important. CCAFS builds on two research communities that have traditionally not worked very well together. It's the climate global change research community that focuses on the global level, and it's the development community working with individual farmers and villages. And the only way of linking those two is put emphasis on at the regional level. And that is why CCAFS has developed this approach. But in doing so, of course, we must have strong regional partners that can help us focus on this area. As the minister said in his introductory remarks, we must, of course, develop not one event like this one. We must develop processes where we see that the dialogue continues. And it's also very important to have strong discussions at the national level as it leads into international negotiations. There was, for example, a meeting of the FAO World Food Security Committee in Rome last week that discussed climate change and food security as one of its two key topics. There is a meeting in Qatar, a ministerial meeting in Qatar in a few weeks' time on food security in drylands, leading up to the climate negotiations in Qatar in late November, early December. That, of course, needs to be prepared, and it's important that mechanisms are developed to ensure that the scientific community and the people going to the negotiations have an exchange of views and experiences involving also other stakeholders. I'm from Sweden. I know it doesn't happen in Sweden. I wish it did, because I think the national delegations would be so much stronger if we have a similar type of arrangement as we have now, both on climate and ecosystem services at the international level. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I've also noted in the booklet that we got for our field trip that Burkina Faso was the first African country to approve a national program of adaptation. I hope that you can continue to provide leadership and convince your neighbor countries through appropriate regional channels to do the same. I also think this reflects on our experiences from the field visit. It is truly a daunting challenge for the villagers in northern Mali to make a livelihood out of agriculture. And you know that much better than I. But we were at the same time inspired by the entrepreneurship that they expressed and their wish to, from one farmer entrepreneurial spirit, to engage 50 farmers, from one village to engage 100 villages. And this is, of course, what is important both at the village level and at the government level. Finally, I would like to thank you all for coming here. It's been a very rich discussion, and thank you for the presentations. This is just one step in what I think will be an important regional process. As we've argued in the context of the discussions of the climate negotiations, that agriculture is part of the problem, but it must also be part of the solution. We need to engage with ministries, with farmers' organizations, with the private sector, and science at local, regional, and global levels. We are eager to help develop that in West Africa, but we need your help, your assistance, and your engagement. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, dear Chair. I would like, in terms of conclusion, to say two words. The first is that everybody agrees that the problem is important, cross-cutting, and that we must give resources and make required efforts to address it. The second, this effort must consist in integrating the issue of climate change in the policies. And a question was raised here by one of the interveners. Those who develop these policies, they do not have the required knowledge to integrate these important issues in the policies. So there's a need of capacity building. Also, I realize that there are many initiatives in the issue. I noted, for example, the AMA project, WASCAL, CCAFS, and the European Union. There's also another project which is with Australian cooperation. So there are many initiatives, and everybody recognizes that there is no integration, no convergence in these initiatives. So, and Dr. Sedeme called upon the policy makers. I agree with you. Unfortunately, it is our technician we become politic makers. I don't know if they will change or if there are some changes, some pressure. It's real. That we need more than that from the part of policy makers to be interested in these issues. Of course, for the moment, we do not say that there is a problem of funds. I know that funds come from everywhere for climate change, but it's after. Because the funds are limited in the time, because 10 years, 20 years on climate change is nothing. We must contemplate it for many generations, and so I think that it is necessary that we must give more importance. And as you know, the policy makers do not give resources apart from politic makers. If you say climate change, the politician will not give you money. But if you say is a policy of agricultural development in the country which must integrate the issues of climate change. At this moment, okay, it's like the banks. We are working the same. So I think my own point of view is that we've got much more problem of coordination than the problem of resources. So this is the problem, and here we must work on that. I think that this kind of forum that permits to bring together technicians, decision makers, the users, the producers, and other persons should permit to have better convergence. So I'm questioning myself today. All the people I quoted in Burkina Faso, I don't know how it will work. Where will we have the linkages, the interactions, and the synergy and the complementarities? And this is the real challenge. We'll try to see if we can will be useful as a policymaker. Will accompany, but it's sometimes difficult to decide. On top of that, the technician must do that and that. But if the baseline is not, if not the interaction are not already done, sometimes a decision is not sufficient to make it be applicable. So I think I won't say more. So time is a constraint. So I consider that this project is the first step. That is online of convergence, of integration also, and I hope that it will permit also to capture the other projects that are ongoing so that we could go on the same direction and conduct complementary activities. So, and this all I wanted to say. So after there is, we have the launch of the book. Thank you. So we'll start it before we finish. Mr. Distinguished guest, among the recommendation of this session of high-level between researchers and decision maker, the common sharing and valuing of knowledge have been underlined by most of the interveners to permit all the stakeholders to capitalize the gains here. This is what we must favor. And the CCAFS here in Africa has integrated it in funding in 2011 a study on the 6 countries. So today, 25th October, with your presence, Mr. that CCAF chose to launch officially this working document that is called Innovation for Innovative Practices for Change, Adaptation and Mitigation in West Africa for 6 countries. I will invite Dr. Zumore to give the document to the Minister of Scientific Researches and Innovation of Burkina Faso. Doctor, please, you have the floor. Come and take the book. Thank you, Minister. In fact, we wanted really to show that the farmers in West Africa are also searchers and that they can innovate mainly in the area of climate change. So we wanted to produce this document of 40 farmer innovators in matter adaptation and mitigation of the effect of climate change in 6 countries. So we wanted here to show here the will of research to try to provide its tone in this provision of updated information to all the actors. It is why we produce this first document. So we are very happy today to share this document with you, with all the participants. So I've got the honor to transmit you this first book draft on behalf of the team of CCAF present here. Thank you, CCAFS. Thanks to the Minister of Research, Scientific Research and Innovation, with its responsible. Dear Chair, we are at the end of this session. Can we close it? Thank you, dear Minister. Dear guests, dear researchers, I thanks you for your presence in this session of high level between researchers and decision makers. The press conference what was initiated is not cancelled. We'll invite the minister to join our friends of the press which are waiting for you. For the other participant, don't forget that there is a cocktail offered by the CCAFS. Thank you all for coming, and long life to Burkina Faso. See you next. Thanks.